You want people to come be a guest on your podcast? Oh, you just landed on the right video. I'm going to give you 4 steps to get the perfect guest to say yes to your podcast. Let's get to it. All right, so let's talk about getting the perfect guest to say yes to being on your podcast. This is so exciting. I love it. Before I dive into the how to do this, I just want to share something with you that's going to make you feel really good. Right out of the gate, most people will say yes. But Sarah, I want Oprah on my podcast. Okay, maybe not Oprah, but even sometimes Oprah will say yes. She says yes to some people, right? Here's the deal. You have to understand that having a guest on your podcast is free PR for them. So if you frame it that way and you actually talk about your audience and how you'll share the podcast and how you will share their information, they're probably going to say yes. So I want to have that clear for you before we even dive into the how, so you feel good about inviting people to be on your podcast, because we want people to be on your podcast, right? If you think I'm like BSing about that, think about how many human beings you actually need to purchase into your business this year for you to be financially successful. It's not that many. Now, I know some of us have really huge goals. So it might be like, yeah, I need 50,000 people to like invest in a course. That may be the case. But even if you want to say 50,000 people out of 300 million, not that many. Most people, it's fewer individual sales than that, right? It might be 25 people for you every year. It might be 300 people for you every year. And if that's the case, every single podcast you could be on has potential customers listening, right? Well, it's the same for your podcast. So when you're reaching out to other guests, you want them to understand, like, listen, I have your people. Even if you have 10 people and a dog listening to your podcast, that's 10 people they don't currently have. And if they need 200 people to be in their business and you bring over 4, that's going to be like worth it. So let's have that be the backdrop for this conversation. So how do you choose the perfect guest? The first thing is you want to make sure they're aligned with your audience. Their interests need to be somewhat aligned with yours. I talked about this a little bit in my last video on how to be a great guest. You can grab that there. What you could do to make sure that your interests are aligned is look for people who are tangential to your audience, meaning they don't do the exact same thing you do, but you can help them and they can help you. When you're looking for your perfect guest, I would recommend you don't just chase somebody who is kind of a celebrity in your eyes or someone you love. Again, the Oprahs of the world, right? I would look for someone who is supportive of your people in a way that they need. And here's what you want to look for. You want to look for how engaged their audience is with them. Do you see them in the way that they produce video content, in the way they produce their own podcasts, in the way that they're producing content or offering services and products? Is there a response to that? That's the person that you want to go with. And listen, you don't have to go to the very, very top person. You don't have to go to somebody who's got 80 million followers. You can go to somebody who's got 80 or 8,000. Or 80,000, right? And they are going to say yes because they're going to want to grow. Because we all know when we're on the path, what are we always doing? We're always looking at the person ahead of us. Even if they have 80,000 followers and you have 4, right? It doesn't matter. That 4 can add on to theirs if their goal is 100. Always trust yourself that you have something of value to bring to the table by sharing their story. The second thing is you want to send them a really powerful email as a colleague, making sure you're empathetic to their needs. Oh my gosh, I know, nerve-wracking. Hello. Here's one of my tricks for sending emails. If you don't know what the email is, you can usually figure it out on the website. A lot of influencers or people who have big audiences, they will have a form on their website. You can fill that out. Chances are you probably won't hear back. What I advise is that you figure out what the email address is. Wait, what? Yeah, figure it out. You know how you do that? You look at the bottom at some of their contacts. Sometimes it'll say for PR, reach out to this person. Inside the company, there will be a way to figure out what the formula is for that individual person's email. So it could be sarah.walton@sarahwalton.com. It's not my email address, but you know what I'm saying. Look at the patterns, really helpful. Also super helpful if you want somebody who, say, is on a TV show, in a magazine, or an online blog. You can usually figure out what their email address is and reach out to them directly. I know. Now, here's how respectfully you do that, though. Please don't do that and spam people. That's terrible. That's just going to ruin your reputation. Like, that is the last thing you want to do. So when you actually reach out to somebody, the number one thing you want to do is go with empathy. I know. I always tell you human beings and being a great person will grow your business, right? Know what's going on in their lives based on their posts and what they're sharing. Talk about past episodes that they've been on. Talk about who's in your audience and how that can help grow their audience. I think my audience would love to hear from you because they don't understand accounting, and I love the way that you talk about accounting. It is so cool. Nobody does it quite the way that you do. The other thing I'd love you to do in that email is really consider for yourself. Do you want to create a long-term relationship with this person? Like, is this somebody that you would like to have on your list of people that you can reach out to and say you need something, or you want to help them? Think about that as you're sending this email, because it's going to matter and it's going to shape how you talk to them. Finally, what I'd love you to do is consider yourself a colleague to this person. All of us who are in this game, we want to grow our reach. We want to help more people. They have a mission. They have something they're up to. And as their colleague, you want to support them in doing that. So tell them that. I love what you're doing and I want to support you. My audience may not be as big as yours, but we are mighty and we are engaged. And I think we have something of value to exchange here. Now, the other thing that can turn you into a colleague is understanding their launch cycle or their release cycle. And what I mean by that is if you want, say, an author to be on your podcast, you want to make sure you're following them and you know when their next book release will be. You're hearing whisperings like, hey, I saw that post. I know you're working on it. Would you like to come on my podcast to talk about it when it gets released? Oh my gosh, yes, please. Same with launch cycles. If you know that you're following someone who's got a kind of a regular launch cycle, reach out to them and say, hey, the next time that you launch that program, come be on my podcast. I think my audience would love to hear about it. The third thing you want to do is make sure they are prepared for the podcast as much as possible. You want to send them a recap of the questions you'll be asking. You want to make sure they know what questions they want to be asked, if there's anything they want to change or update. And one of my favorite questions is, how do you want the audience to feel after our interview? I love that because it sets the tone for both of you to understand how you can truly make this interview successful for them. Because that's what this is about, right? It's about helping other people grow. Number 4, make it super easy for them to share. When someone's a guest on your podcast, they may not always share it, right? Especially if you are keeping track of their launch cycle or their release cycle. They may have 45 different podcasts that they're on that week alone because they're in launch phase or they're in release phase, and they won't be able to promote all of them. That may very well happen. So you want to be understanding about that, and you need to understand that this is long form content, okay? It's not just this one hit wonder. And I want you to look at this podcast interview as a long-term, long game stretch for you. Pull out quotes of things that they said. Talk about your favorite piece. Make short video clips. Reuse this over and over and over, especially if it's somebody you are so excited about having on your podcast. Talk about it 3 months later. Give them an opportunity to be shared, and they may reshare it as well. Even though it's later, they still want their message to be shared. So make that easy. And look at how you can turn this into a long-term game. And you might want to talk about that in your email as well. Like, I don't do one-hit wonders. This isn't just about this one interview. This is about really expanding your reach and supporting you in your mission. One last tip. I know I always do this at the end of my videos, right? One last tip. Boom, I'm so excited when I do this. Please, for the love of all things, do not add them to your newsletter list without asking their permission. Big bad here. It actually just happened to me. And I was like, I was a guest on your podcast and now I have 45 emails in my inbox and you did not ask my permission to do that. Now I understand it. We're getting to know each other. We're sharing, but you don't do that to a colleague. To a colleague, you reach out and say, oh my gosh, you know what? I'm in the middle of a launch and I'd love to add you to my list so you understand what I do. Would that be okay with you? But don't assume that somebody else wants to be on your list just because they were a guest on your podcast. Okay, bonus tip number 2. I have to. Don't be afraid to tag them in those posts as you expand out over time in sharing their content. That's one of the ways that you are proving that you are a colleague. You are there to stand by your side. You are in this for the long game. This isn't some like imaginary one-hit wonder thing you did. You care about them, you care about their mission, and you care about actually being connected with them, right? And have audiences see that you are connected because your interests are aligned, which of course takes us back to step 1. Make sure your interests are aligned. All right, you guys, I hope this was super helpful. Go out there and get people to say yes to your podcast because it matters for you and it matters for them. I'll see you guys next time.